In the tranquil town of Morenci, Michigan, where families unite in celebration of gratitude and togetherness, a bone-chilling mystery unfurled one fateful Thanksgiving Day, casting an indelible shadow over the community. This is no ordinary crime tale. It's a narrative that resonates with the vulnerability of hope and the relentless torment of unanswered riddles. Amidst the falling autumn leaves in November 2010, three young brothers, bound by blood, became the epicenter of a confounding vanishing act that continues to confound even the most seasoned experts and law enforcement. They didn't just leave behind their possessions. They left behind an eerie trail of silence so profound that it still haunts anyone who hears their tale. Their abrupt disappearance from the haven of their own home sent shockwaves rippling through the heart of the community and far beyond. As we plunge into the depths of this enigma, we proceed cautiously, mindful of the enduring anguish experienced by those who long for their return. We're going back to Morenci, a small and close-knit town in Michigan. Morenci is known for its beautiful landscapes and friendly community, where people know each other, and life is peaceful. It's in this quiet place that the story of the Skelton Brothers begins. The Skelton family was a part of this community, just like many others. The parents, John and Tanya, had three energetic boys: Andrew, 9 years old, who loved learning; Alexander, 7 years old, who was creative; and Tanner, 5 years old, who was always full of energy and laughter. But underneath this seemingly normal family, there were problems. John and Tanya had difficulties in their marriage, and the tight-knit community could sense something was wrong. Despite their troubles, the focus was always on the happiness of the three boys, who were the heart of the Skelton family. As Thanksgiving 2010 approached, the town was getting ready for the usual celebrations. Families looked forward to gathering and being thankful together. However, no one could have predicted that this Thanksgiving would be remembered for a mystery that would shock and sadden the town and many others far beyond. On that Thanksgiving Day, Tanya Skelton drove along the familiar streets to her estranged husband John's house, the back seat filled with the chatter and laughter of her three sons. Andrew, the eldest, was eager to share his latest school project with his father. Middle child Alexander, always keen to lighten the mood, cracked jokes, much to the delight of Tanner, the youngest. Despite the strained relationship with John, Tanya found comfort in the joy and innocence of her boys. Upon arriving at John's house, after exchanging hugs and a chorus of "Love you, Mom," the boys scampered into their father's house, leaving a trail of youthful exuberance behind them. The return journey home for Tanya was enveloped in silence, a stark contrast to the lively presence of her sons. She busied herself with preparations for the rest of the Thanksgiving weekend, looking forward to reuniting with the boys the following day. Despite the occasional friction in the co-parenting arrangement, she and John had always managed to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the sake of their children. However, the next day brought an unsettling change. Tanya's heart sank as she pulled up to a disturbingly quiet house. There was no sign of the boys, and her repeated knocks went unanswered. Calls to John's phone added to her growing worry as they rang out into the void. Fear crept into Tanya's heart, prompting her to call the police. With each passing moment, the situation grew more surreal. The arrival of the officers marked the beginning of a nightmare. Tanya's description of the situation, her voice laced with fear, initiated a full-blown search for Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner. As the initial shock of the Skelton brothers' disappearance settled over Morenci, the gears of an extensive investigation began to turn. Law enforcement agencies, both local and federal, converged on the small town, transforming it into the epicenter of a high-profile case that gripped the nation. The father, John Skelton, quickly became the primary focus of the investigation. The police began to search for him. He was quickly located under concerning circumstances. John Skelton was found in a hospital. He had been hospitalized with injuries related to a suicide attempt. This discovery was made on the same day that Tanya Skelton was unable to find her sons at his home and reported them missing. Following this discovery, the police immediately questioned John Skelton regarding the whereabouts of Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner. However, his responses led to more questions than answers, particularly his claim about handing the boys over to an underground organization to protect them, a claim that lacked corroborating evidence. Skelton's hospitalization and the nature of his statements led the police to intensify their investigation into the disappearance of the boys, including searches of his home and inquiries into his recent activities and communications. The claim by John Skelton, the father of the missing Skelton brothers, that he had handed his sons over to an underground organization was a pivotal and perplexing element of the investigation. Here's what was found regarding this claim. Law enforcement officials found no evidence to substantiate John Skelton's claim about an underground organization. Despite extensive investigations, there was no proof that such a group existed or that the boys had been handed over to any organization. Investigators were skeptical of Skelton's story. They considered the possibility that this claim was fabricated to mislead the investigation or to hide the actual circumstances surrounding the boys' disappearance. The authorities pursued all possible leads to verify the existence of the alleged organization, including examining John Skelton's communications and activities around the time of the disappearance. However, these efforts did not yield any credible information supporting his claim. The lack of evidence and the unusual nature of the claim led both the public and experts involved in the case to question its veracity. It was widely speculated that the story was a cover-up for other actions taken by John Skelton. Meanwhile, the community of Morenci rallied in support. Volunteers, alongside professionals, scoured the town and its outskirts, through woods, fields, and along riverbanks. Flyers with the faces of the three boys were distributed far and wide, and their story spread across media channels, igniting a nationwide call to action. As days turned to weeks, and weeks into months, the case encountered numerous challenges. The lack of concrete evidence, the elusive nature of the alleged underground organization, and conflicting testimonies led to a complex and frustrating path for investigators. The mystery seemed to deepen with each passing day, as hopes for a simple resolution faded. In the midst of this, the community's resolve only strengthened. Candlelight vigils were held, and the boys' faces remained a constant presence in the town. The search for the Skelton brothers was not just an investigation, it had become a mission, a collective vow from a community to find answers and to bring the boys home. Yet, despite exhaustive efforts and countless hours of investigation, the breakthrough that everyone hoped for remained elusive. The case of the Skelton brothers stood as a haunting enigma, a puzzle that resisted solving, a story incomplete, and a wound in the heart of Morenci that refused to close. After the disappearance of the Skelton brothers, their father, John Skelton, faced legal consequences. John Skelton was convicted on charges related to the case. In September 2011, he was found guilty of 3 counts of unlawful imprisonment regarding his son's disappearance. The conviction was based on the evidence that he had taken the boys and had either harmed them or placed them in a situation where they could be harmed. In 2011, John Skelton was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison for these charges. This sentence reflected the severity of the crime and the profound impact of the boys' disappearance on the community and their family. Despite his conviction, the whereabouts and the fate of Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner Skelton remained unknown. John Skelton continued to maintain his story about handing the boys over to an organization, but without evidence or further details, the truth behind his claims remained unclear. The case of the Skelton brothers continued to be investigated. Law enforcement agencies remained committed to finding out what happened to the boys, hoping that new evidence or information might eventually come to light. Today, the mystery of what happened to Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner remains unsolved, their whereabouts unknown. But the legacy of their story goes beyond the unanswered questions. As we conclude, we remember the Skelton brothers not just as names in a cold case file, but as three vibrant, young lives, each with their own dreams, laughter, and love.